The Trial and Error podcast, also known as The Tap, and Tap Creative Studios presents Mogi, written and narrated by Aaron Gertz. And if that intro isn't kissing my own ass, then I certainly don't know what is. An old woman sits by a campfire under an eternity of stars and surrounded by the flickering faces of smiling grandchildren, eager to hear one of her stories. She puffs her pipe, leans forward through the smoke, and draws the youngsters in with the gesture of her wise, old, wrinkled hand. "Have I ever told you the legend of Mogi the Red Wolf?" she asks. The grandchildren shake their heads. "Well," she puffs her pipe again, "it all began long ago and long away, north of here in a mysterious forest known as the Ice Woods. And at the time our hero Mogi was a villain." Mogi was the leader of his wolf pack, you see. He was young, brave, cunning, and beautiful, with his pelt as white as icewood snow. But most of all, Mogi was ambitious. He wanted his pack, the pack he loved so dearly, to be the greatest in all the land. It indeed grew and thrived because of his ambition. For a time, his unmatched hunting instincts guided the pack throughout the ice woods, taking down prey wherever they roamed, from the smallest mouse to the largest moose and beyond. Day after day, kill after kill, however, Mogi's ego began poisoning his ambition. He became addicted to death, you see, and the power that came with his ability to administer it wherever and whenever he saw fit. That power was a most dangerous high, made all the more potent knowing there was nothing that could be done to stop him. After so much killing, his face, Mogi's beautiful face, became stained crimson with the constant flow of blood from his prey. Seasons changed, but the killing remained constant, and the stains only grew further down his pelt. Mogi, it seemed, was gone, hunted down and killed by the red wolf he'd become, the demon of the ice woods. The pack became wary of their half-red, half-crazed leader's orders. Pups died of exhaustion from their constant travel. Brave followers gave their lives to needlessly take down saber-tooths and mammoths, and any who challenged their leader's rule only added the red stains on his pelt. And on it went like this, the pack suffering and starving while the red wolf's ego feasted on the high of power. Prey eventually lost its luster to the red wolf because it no longer satiated his bloodlust, and they couldn't hunt him back. He wanted a challenge, wanted the power to regain its potency. That's when he began waging wars against the other wolf packs in the ice woods, with whom there'd been peace for years. The red wolf got his fix of death. Time went on, and the stains grew with age. Eventually, the pack, once 50 strong, dwindled down to just he and his 2 starving pups roaming the ice woods for food in the autumn cold. The leader's ribs bulged out of his blood-red pelt, and he knew it wouldn't be long before he and his son starved to death. He showed love for his pups and an earnest to keep them alive. Echoes of genuine love and affection Mogi once had, but the red wolf convinced himself it was only because they represented his bloodline. To keep them alive was to keep his glory, the glory of the red wolf demon of the ice woods, alive after his death. He instructed them to wait by a lone pine atop a hill and save what strength they had left while he went and hunted. But the ice woods were dead. Prey had long been killed or run off by the redwoods' hunts and wolf wars. Dead and quiet it was, but somehow the red wolf felt as if he was being watched. Hunger made the mind weak, he told himself, paying no mind to the feeling. Suddenly, the silence was broken when the lone leader heard a roar in the direction of his pups. The red wolf hustled back as fast as he could and reached the pups in time to see a grizzly taking her last bites of them. His legs trembled from exhaustion and shock. He asked himself, how did the red wolf fall so far? His pride was shattered and heart torn by the loss of his pups. Only then did he realize what reaching his ambition had cost him. How it crumbled upon the foundation of vanity and ego, and how worthless his life was without his pack to live with. Pain of their loss coursed through his bones. He wanted to vomit, but nothing was in his stomach, and all that came out were tears. The grizzly eyed the wolf toiling in his thoughts. It was going to be a long winter, she thought, and an extra helping of wolf sounded just splendid before hibernation. With nothing left to live for but death, the red wolf attacked the bear. He managed to shred one of her eyes in the suicidal dash, but the grizzly bit him in the scruff of his neck and tossed him down a hill. The hulking beast gave pursuit. The red wolf's vision blurred. His body was broken, and as he stared into the gaping maw of the grizzly, it roared in pain. Then again and again, and before unconsciousness took him, the old wolf saw the bear running away with feathered sticks poking out of him. Strange, he thought to himself. So strange. The red wolf did not know how much time had passed by the time he came to. It was winter, his instincts told him, but he was confused as to why he felt so warm. He blinked once, twice, and stared at a glowing orange aura before him and felt the tightness of strange wrappings around his body. His eyes darted around the shelter until they saw him, Loboko, the rival leader he never killed, and now his head poked above the warm, glowing orange aura, staring at the red wolf without eyes in his head. The old wolf struggled to fight his way free, but was too weak to do so. Confusion and bewilderment became him, because approaching him was a two-legged wolf with Loboko's head over its own. Its pelt wasn't furry either, but brown and smooth. Then the two-legged wolf removed Loboko's head to reveal her own with flowing black fur unlike any he'd ever seen before that fell around her shoulders. His instincts assured him between his heavy breaths that this was no enemy, but the two-legged she-wolf who'd saved him from the grizzly. His heart ceased its racing to a canter, and he realized she was nursing him back to health. So he rested his head and let sleep take him once again. The lone wolf's consciousness drifted, and he found himself wandering aimlessly in a dark land until he found a glowing pond. He looked into it, and staring back in the shimmers of the water was the face of every animal he'd killed. All the prey, every enemy wolf, every member of his wolf pack, his pups, until finally he stared back into the eyes of a wolf whose face was white as snow. He hardly recognized the beautiful young wolf he used to be, and tears dripped off the stained crimson fur into the pond. He told the young wolf how sorry he was for what he had become, for killing what peaceful life he could have lived with his pack and his family. The young wolf leaned closer to the red wolf, and the red wolf closer to the young wolf until their noses touched in the reflection of the pond's water. Their tongues lapped the water, and the young wolves cleansed the red from the old wolf's pelt. Mogi stepped back and saw the reflection of his younger self and his old pack behind him. Their forgiveness coursed through his veins, a rush more vividly splendid than his old addiction to death and power could possibly have given him. Happiness became him, and Mogi's head shot up to the stars and howled with his pack. Mogi leapt from his slumber and began to howl the best he could in his weakened state. Meanwhile, the she-wolf sat and smiled at the strange beast she'd brought back to her teepee. She rubbed his back until he fell asleep and continued to work, washing the red from his pelt and wet rags and applying herbs to the gashes the grizzly left. Her elders had told her about the red wolf demon in the ice woods and how it had killed all the game within it. In fact, it was her task to kill the red wolf on her quest of becoming and bring back his pelt. The wolf's death would mean the rebalancing of nature within the ice woods so life may thrive there once again. The she-wolf walked her own path, however, near the advice of her elders, but true to her own way of things, using her heart as her North Star, exactly as her father had taught her growing up. The she-wolf had become the best hunter in her tribe under his guidance, and as she turned 14, she was ready for her year-long quest of becoming. Not all returned from it, however. They would become lost on their quest, the elders would proclaim, only to be found again in the afterlife. Most were scared as they left the tribe on their quest, but not the she-wolf. No, she was counting down the days before she could take off. She spent the first few months on her quest of becoming, stalking the red wolf, staying downwind, observing his actions, reactions, and hunting instincts so she could prepare herself to kill him. The she-wolf could not deny the imbalance the red wolf brought to nature, but also couldn't help but admire his tenacity, fearlessness, and genius with the hunt. She also observed his pack dying away one by one, making her task of killing the red wolf easier as they did, for they would protect their leader. Remorse came over her, though, the more she witnessed. The wolf wars were by far the most savage display of nature she'd ever seen. She pitied the old wolf, saw the pain in his eyes from afar and high above the pines. She saw a snow-white wolf who truly loved his pack, wanted to provide for them, but was trapped in a cage of red that controlled his actions. She saw Mogi. In a way, she grew to admire and love the tragic wolf and thought to herself, why would I kill a potential companion? He is not a menace, but has only lost his way. She waited for the right time to make contact with the red wolf. Too soon could cost her her life, she knew. The red wolf was desperate now and starving, and he would attack her without a second thought. Then killing him would be inevitable for her survival. But she didn't want to kill Mogi, not at all. She wanted to save Mogi and kill the red wolf demon of the ice woods. And during that month, revitalizing and healing the old wolf, that's exactly what she did. She rescued Mogi from death. It took some time to regain his strength, eating small amounts of food the she-wolf provided and drinking bizarre herbal tonics she concocted. As his strength grew, so too did Mogi's trust in the she-wolf, even allowing her to rub his belly when she'd spark another orange aura at night to sit by. She reintroduced him to the wild, to the hunt, but also to balance. The she-wolf and Mogi hunted in the outskirts of the ice woods, only eating what they needed and never overindulging. He'd also taken a liking to the strange meat growing from the bushes. They were black and juicy, not as good as venison, Mogi knew, but good as he chomped down on them awkwardly. They were kindred spirits, born of the same instinct, Mogi and the she-wolf. Natural-born hunters, perfectly synchronized in thought and heartbeat as they stalked their prey and struck simultaneously. Months passed of hunting and foraging and protecting one another when predators would come around hungry for 2 or 4-legged wolves. Always at each other's side, and Mogi realized he was in a new pack with the she-wolf, except this time he wasn't the leader, and he couldn't have been happier simply being there to help her survive and keep her warm at night. Love and affection for the she-wolf grew within Mogi, but also a touch of guilt, thinking himself undeserving of such happy feelings after all he'd done. He whined at the thoughts at night, and her touch would always put him at ease. Such time had passed, and winter warned at its return as steam rose from the pack's exhales once again. Although healthy and happy, Mogi felt age growing on his joints and vision, and felt a dramatic change coming to his life, knowing not what or why, only the knowing. One day the she-wolf came to him. She wore Kaboko's head over her flowing black fur as she ran her claws through his pelt. Mogi didn't understand her words, but could understand her tears. Their spiritual connection relayed all she wanted to say, how much she enjoyed her time with Mogi, how much she loved him, and that it was time to return to her own pack. Hers was a nomadic one. All wolf packs were, and this wasn't her territory. Mogi knew this, and it did nothing to ease the pain of losing his she-wolf. It was not her choice, but simply time for her pack to move on, a change as inevitable and unstoppable as the seasons, and they both knew his age and pride wouldn't allow him to travel with their pack and away from his ice woods. He licked her face, and she gave her friend a kiss and bid him farewell. Mogi howled as she left, a thank you for saving him, for loving him, and he turned and lost himself in the ice woods. The lone wolf survived the way his leader had taught him, only eating what he needed, letting the other living beings thrive in the ice woods, and maintaining the balance of life he was not beyond, but a part of. He missed hunting with her, and felt her absence weighing heavy on him. He'd spent time remembering her, but it was never the same, nor enough to ease the pain she'd once been able to expel from his heart. The old wolf's bones and joints missed her too. How she'd been so nimble in performing the heavy lifting tasks of the hunt. As it had promised, winter dug its claws deep into the air of the ice woods. It was colder than Mogi had ever remembered, and death used hunger like a stick to poke at his gut. It growled and pained him, and he knew this would be his last winter. The bushmeat satiated him enough to keep walking and drinking from the stream that ran through the forest. That was about all he could do now. Mogi roamed the ice woods, recognizing every inch, watching the memories of his youth and life play around him in the falling snow. Then he stopped at a certain pine, one he recognized well, the one he had told his pups to rest at while he hunted. But instead of his pups, Mogi saw 2 baby deer fawn no larger than rabbits. In the back of his mind, Mogi knew he'd killed more fawn than he could count. He knew he could easily kill these 2, and they'd keep the hunger away for a time. They stared at each other as Mogi crept toward them, the snow not so much as crunching under the skilled, wise pads of the old hunter. Frozen in fear, the fawns only watched and shivered as Mogi came upon them. His mouth opened, drool dripping from his fangs, and he began licking their tiny heads. "Where's your mother?" Mogi wondered, looking in all directions of the frosty, white-covered nature. She was nowhere to be seen or smelled, so he curled himself around them and warmed them for the night. A roar woke them in the morning. Though they didn't speak the same language, Mogi's instincts told the fawns to stay still as he turned and faced a familiar one-eyed grizzly. He bore his teeth and approached, feeling as young and powerful as he'd ever been once upon a time. Mogi bound left, then right, and bit a chunk from the grizzly's belly. Another roar came, and Mogi couldn't believe his jaw was strong enough to have bitten such a chunk out of the bear. Then the bear swiped faster than Mogi could react. Somehow, someway, the massive claws seemed to pass through him. He and the bear stopped. She glanced at Mogi in sheer surprise. Surprise then gave way to rage, and the bear stood upon her hind legs some 14 feet tall and roared a mighty roar with her innards falling out of her belly. Mogi sneered in a smile of his younger self, feeling a rush of a challenge and willingness to die and protect his own. Mogi howled to answer the grizzly's challenge. The howl shook the trees, drowned out the grizzly's roar, and came to a stop once Mogi's jaws chomped down on the bear's open throat. The grizzly shook violently, swinging Mogi left and right like a rag doll, but he didn't let go, not until the bear lowered herself into the snow and died in a steaming red puddle. Mogi turned to the fawn, both standing and staring at him. Then he was confused, because behind the fawns was an old wolf curled into a ball covered in a nightfall's layer of snow. Mogi walked by the fawns and recognized it was him. He turned back and saw in the reflection of their large, innocent eyes a spectral wolf staring back. There was no red stain, no white, only the sparkling bluish white of ice. The fawns rubbed their faces against their guardian. He did not feel them, as their noses fell through the spirit self, but he knew they were thanking him for their last warmth of his life. For without it, they wouldn't have survived the night. A twig snapped behind them, and all three turned their heads to see a large doe, the fawn's mother. She regarded Mogi, bowed her head, as did the fawns. Mogi returned the bow, and watched them disappear into the ice woods. Mogi gave a last look at the grizzly, felt no remorse nor hatred for the beast that had killed his sons. Rather, gratitude. Without the grizzly, Mogi never would have changed. Never would he have escaped the dreaded red wolf demon of the ice woods. Perhaps without the grizzly, he never would have met the she-wolf or felt the warmth of her love. Now Mogi was more, he thought to himself, walking to the mountain bluff that overlooked all the ice woods. He surveyed his home, felt a deep love for it all, and appreciation for every mistake he'd made there and learned from. Mogi realized he was not alive nor dead, but a spirit made of his instincts, memory, spirit, and purpose. He was a destiny beyond death, and the forest would never be without balance again so long as he was there to protect it. The eternal quest of becoming for the guardian demon of the ice woods. The thought pleased Mogi, ready for his task, and he sparkled in the sunrise with the rest of the snow covering his home. Mogi gave a howl, echoing throughout the trees, across the land, afterlife, and eternity. It reverberated miles upon miles away where the young she-wolf was back with her pack. They celebrated her return from her quest of becoming and having slain the red wolf. Around an orange aura she sat with a smile across her face, much like the ones her grandchildren have now, as an image of an old friend appeared in her mind's eye, her spirit animal, her Mogi. "That's a really great story, Grandma," said one of the grandchildren. "You think so?" she said, leaning back and taking another puff of her pipe. "I do, but what happened to the she-wolf?" "Oh, she went on and got married and started a wolf pack of her own," the grandmother smiled. "And guess what? All her pups had pups of their own who all loved sitting around campfires listening to the adventures of their grandmother's youth." The grandchildren's eyes lit up as bright as the stars with their faces warm around the orange aura. The end. Thank you for listening to this audio recording of Mogi by Aaron Gertz.